there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Increasing the block size to 32 megabytes right now. What would be the top 5 arguments that would get hurled against me?
Oh, that's a good one.
There are a few that the big blockers got right.
Ching, like all these coins splash into the wallets of all the winners. I love that.
There's a new threat out there. It's crypto.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode number 125, Journal of Global Surgery, featuring Saqib Noor. Today is Sunday, the 18th of August, 2024. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is in the producing chair, same as always. And our guest today is a surgeon. He's involved, the founder of Journal of Global Surgery, which we're going to hear more about. And he's also been heavily involved with the general protocols team and BCH Bull. I'll leave it up to him to explain the full extent of those different projects. Welcome to the show, Saqib. How did you get into BCH?
Hey, thank you for having me, everyone. My last podcast was a few years back related to BCH, so it's a pleasure to be here again. It's a good question how I was initially involved in Bitcoin Cash. I don't know how long we have to go through the entire backstory, but
plenty of time, mate. Plenty of time.
Yeah, all right. Let's go. So let me take you to San Diego to a little Mexican restaurant, Thai restaurant that my wife loves. And she met her best friend there in San Diego. We go every year, and she happened to be dating a very important member of the Bitcoin Cash community at the time. And through their connections, I essentially got connected to one of my mentors who maintains and still is a very big education source for me of Bitcoin Cash, which is John Yeary, or Emergent Reasons. And essentially, he took me under his wing, 2020, 2019, something like that, and taught me everything I need to know about crypto, Bitcoin Cash, the politics, the drama, and the rest of it. So for about a year and a half, John would, tutor me, tell me all about it. And through that and Flip Starter campaign, I got to learn a little bit about the Bitcoin Cash community.
Right. So you weren't involved pre the split or anything, and you just got it straight from the master after after it was all said and done, really?
I think I bought XRP in 2017. What is this crypto stuff? In 2017, I think I held a little bit of XRP. I had no idea what I was doing. And then really the second coin that I was introduced to was Bitcoin Cash via John.
And if you said 2018, 2019, so that was what, after BSV, but before the XCC split. So did you get a bit of a first-hand look at things? Were a bit rocky in there, right?
No, there was... my initial motive was for fundraising for the project that I was running, which was One.Surgery at the time. And John introduced me to Flip Starter and said, why don't you use this Flip Starter? And I was like, what is this piece of, I didn't understand it at all. It was clunky, and it was like, when I think about a crowdfunding campaign, you think of Kickstarter and all these other, really fancy ones. And when I was looking at Flip Starter, it didn't make any sense to me. And then at the same time, John was like, don't do it yet, because there's going to be a split. What are you talking about? What is it? I think this was the ABC split.
Yeah, it would have happened.
No, you can't do it now. You can't run your Flip Starter. I'm like, what is it? Like, so the whole concept of what was going on both within crypto and Bitcoin Cash made no sense to me whatsoever. But I just followed what he said. I was like, all right, dude. Like, if we got to wait, we got to wait. And so, I learned about the fork at that point. So that was really my time of getting introduced to Bitcoin Cash, was right at that fork moment, I guess, within a month or two of that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because of all the people that I've talked to on this show, I find everyone's view of BCH specifically, or Bitcoin, is heavily influenced by at what point they came into it. A lot of the people that we've had on this show that joined in 2016, later 2016, early 2017 with the split and everything, their initial recollections, similar to you, are kind of like, what is going on here? This is like, there's a lot happening and everyone's arguing and it takes them a while to make sense of it. Whereas some people who come in when things are a bit more calm, they sort of approach it in a more optimistic direction, perhaps right from the get-go. And so then they already have momentum and enthusiasm. And when problems start, they're kind of buffered by that. It's interesting that you stuck with it. You weren't turned off by the fact that there was conflict going on at that time, right?
You know, I realized pretty early that this is a completely different world. It was like Lord of the Flies. It was, you know, there's the fiat world, and then there's my medical world and my surgical world, and what I would probably deem as relatively normal. And then you step into this crypto world, and then within crypto you've got, you know, the Bitcoin Cash issues, should we say? And I realized very quickly that there is very little way for one world to understand the other. You have to live in both separately, and you can't figure the two out. And that exists to this day. Like every time I tell people I'm working within Bitcoin Cash and cryptocurrency, and it just flies over their head, and they said, "Well, why hasn't it changed the world yet?" And then you have to give a whole list of explanations of what's happened, why it's happened, what are the problems and the dramas, and why isn't adoption taking place. And by the time you've even started that conversation, that person has switched off, right?
Yeah.
So I have to admit, like, I have to give credit to John, because there was a sincerity and an honesty about what he was saying in terms of the potential of this technology, the problems that it could solve, the real world issues of banking and finance and custodialness and inflation, and how Bitcoin Cash had stayed true to that original message of a peer-to-peer digital currency, and how it could make a big impact onto the lives of others, which is really my primary kind of objective, and is to help you know, some of the suffering that's going on. So that sincerity, and then meeting some of the general protocols team and looking at the rest of the Bitcoin Cash community and the fight they had, and understanding that fight, it made me realize that actually being in it for the tech was the general protocols guys, and it was no longer being in it for the numbers go up. And it was that sincerity that made me stay. I have to be honest. Like, had I been, you know, in another community that was talking about, you know, going to the moon and things like that, I probably would have left. So somehow I ended up within this space. And again, it's probably through to the personality of my wife's best friend, who's also very altruistic and selfless, and so I think that group of people within Bitcoin Cash kind of inspired me to stay.
I like what you're saying, that it's these two different worlds, because I also feel that a lot people often talk about like going down the rabbit hole in reference to a lot of things, obviously, but crypto, a lot of people talk about that as like, they look into it a little bit or whatever it is that catches their interest, they get into it, and then you really like, whoa, like this is a whole separate, how does money work and how does cryptocurrency come to be? And then I love the fact that cryptocurrency is just this complete like circus. A lot of the time you've got all these different characters in there. It's the complete opposite of banking, right? People always think of banking as boring and stale and just like guys in suits following the regulations and yada yada. And then crypto is the opposite. It's like influencer driven, it's chaotic as hell, there's interpersonal beefs, there's like exchanges collapsing, there's incompetence, there's criminal activity, there's just everything. It's all in there. I fucking love that of it. It keeps it interesting.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and that's right. It is if you're there with the popcorn and wanting to enjoy it. It's great. It's great fun, right, to watch it. But to stick around in it when you do have like other objectives, it can be very quickly off-putting. So yeah, I mean, it's fun to be in, but like, I think the Bitcoin Cash community is throughout its trials and tribulations, it's stuck to the original message, and that's really why I've stuck around. and I try and ignore the drama. Even to this day, I know there's conflicts within the small communities and then the larger communities, but I try and put it to the side because it's kind of a waste of energy for
you.
It's quite fun, but yeah, I can't get involved in that. I stay to the side. I try and stay quiet, do what I'm doing, fulfill my role, and bounce out as quick as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you said, okay, so we've got that's the BCH backstory, but then you must also have a backstory for the medical stuff as well too. Can you walk me through that from the beginning?
I mean, that's probably the reason why I'm doing all this, right? So I qualified for medical school in the UK in 2004, and then through various reasons, I ended up going to South Africa in 2008. I was keen to quit medicine. I wasn't sure it was the right job, right career for me, whether it would make me happy. And so at the time, I was interested in learning orthopedic surgery. And so I went to South Africa, and it was there that my kind of mind opened a little bit to the injustice of the world that I could see. So I worked in South Africa for a year as an orthopedic doctor. You could see a lot of poverty. Where I worked was an extremely high concentration of HIV rates. So 30, 40, 50% of the population HIV positive. And you go to the pediatric ward, the kids ward, and it's pretty basic, but then there's kids that are just malnourished, essentially dying of HIV. And then the orthopedic side of things, kids with injuries that, perhaps weren't getting the treatments that could be expected. And it made me realize that there was a big difference in what care people received in surgery, medicine, and in different parts of the world. And so when I returned back to the UK in 2009, I was like, all right, I want to continue this career, but I want to learn and study more about this difference in global health, and in particularly with global surgery. So I studied. I continued my medical career. I fought to get onto a training program that would help me become a surgeon in the UK. But every possible moment that I took, I studied disaster medicine, trauma, a master's in trauma. And again, a long story short, I ended up in Haiti after the earthquake in 2010. So in 2010, in February or January, there was an earthquake that killed instantly 100,000 people and probably injured significant more. And again, I was witnessing the devastation of access to healthcare to those that don't and those that do. And these weren't just injured patients from the earthquake. You could see patients who'd been neglected for years prior to that, who'd never had access to a doctor or a surgeon. And so again, I'm conflicted. I'm witnessing these things that are devastating and that have stayed with me and continue to stay with me. And so I learned more, I studied more, I traveled more. I went to Pakistan during another disaster zone. I ended up in Cambodia for 6 months in 2013. And I would see kids with tumors, kids with deformities, fractures that had been left. And so it made me realize there was this very significant difference between those in the West, shall we say, and those in the South. My passion then became that how do we equalize this problem? And at the same time, there was this global surgery movement. Surgeons for decades have been realizing there's a difference, but it was never funded. Surgery was never funded as a global health problem. You talk about 1990s, 80s, and even up to the year 2000, everyone is focused on infectious disease. The funding is for malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, and then and rightly so, and then also nutrition and water safety and things like that. But nobody had ever funded surgery. No one in the West or high-income countries has said, "Hey, surgery is a vital need for these patients." Whereas, in fact, everybody needs surgery. You'll know somebody who needs surgery, who's had surgery, and in fact, the average person will have multiple surgeries in their lifetime. I've already had 2. And so, imagine a world with no surgery and the level of neglect. And so, in 2015 or 13, I believe, there was a big study that essentially said that 4 out of 5 people in the world do not have access to surgery. And
that's mind blowing. Really? 80%, nothing.
80%, nothing, because it's never been funded. Because everyone has said surgery is far too expensive. if you can't afford nutrition or medicines, then surgery is not on our priority list. But the neglect you see and the suffering you see when you don't have access to surgery is horrendous, which is what I still carry with me. I still see the girl with, clubfoot is a disease that you're born with. It's a deformity of your feet that can be treated very easily within the first 3 months of life. And there's a 15-year-old walking down the streets of Haiti with this horrendous deformity. And, so these things, they stay with you. And so once I finished my medical training in the UK, my orthopedic training, I vowed that I would spend the rest of my limited intellectual career to try and focus on this problem. And so I now moved full-time to Cambodia. I work for a charity here, and do my small bits and pieces that I can within this community. But on the global scale, I realized that global surgery and the movement that was developing needed a little bit more input. And that's when I started a organization called One.Surgery. And that was an attempt at a grassroots movement to empower the people, the heroes, I believe, that are working day in, day out in Africa and in Asia, in South America, to facilitate their skills, their education, their advocacy, to build a network, to give them the power to help, right? A lot of the global surgery movement is dictated by the high-income countries, the professors and the universities that say, oh, you must do this, this, and this. When actually, the heroes on the ground are the ones working day in, day out in devastating areas. So even now, for example, I volunteer for an organization that helps out in Gaza. There's a war going on there, as we know. And, every week we have these discussions, and I see kids with their arms and legs blown off. And, I can give advice remotely about how things can be done and what can improve. But the real heroes ultimately are the guys and the girls just like working day in, day out in these settings. So One.Surgery was an attempt to empower those people. And through that, I began to realize, which is a connected issue, is that research is an important aspect of that. When we're trying to improve the services of surgical care in the world, you have probably three important things. One is the clinical care. How do you build capacity in that area? For example, I'm in Cambodia. I'm teaching and training younger doctors to improve their skill set whilst improving the services within the hospital. And so that's capacity building locally to make it sustainable. Then there's education. How do you transfer that knowledge so that people within the South can continue to teach and train? And then the last one is research. Like, how do you develop new knowledge and new answers to questions that the West don't know themselves because they don't see the problem, right? The stuff I see in textbooks are, 1950s, 1940s, 1930s pathology. You don't see that in England anymore. So you can't find the answers to those clinical problems whilst being in the West. You have to see the problems in the South, figure out the answers, and then share that information, right? So that's a research arm. So those are kind of how global surgery is right now, is that people are trying to educate, capacity build, and share research. And One.Surgery was an attempt at trying to pull that all together into a grassroots network. That's still going, but quieting down a little bit because my kind of focused and turned to the research side, which is where the journal comes in. And that opens up a whole new problem, like a whole mind-blowing problem of what's going on in the world. Like it's related, but yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about this global surgery initiative before we get onto that. So you said, so you're working in Cambodia. So give me a sense of what this looks like in practice. So there's you're in a hospital of how many people with how many other doctors. And then when you said the global surgery sort of general movement, who does that involve? Their network of other doctors in similar hospitals? Is it other people from America or the UK or whatever who are in a similar situation to you? Is it local doctors? Is it bigger in Asia or in Africa? Is South America in the picture here? Talk me through all that.
Yeah. So my daily life, I work for a charity that's been working here for 25 years. It is predominantly funded by donors and provides free or extremely affordable, cheap surgical care to children and adults in orthopedics, plastics, ophthalmology, maxillofacial, and ENT surgery. We see patients that are impoverished, who have not had access to care or potentially suboptimal care. And even Cambodia is becoming a more wealthier country. It's now no longer low income, but LMIC, just into that bracket. So there is access to some private healthcare services now. But we're seeing a lot of patients becoming bankrupt or impoverished by accessing private healthcare, perhaps getting suboptimal treatment, and then coming to our charity with deformity, pain, tumors, and they're all complex. These aren't easy cases. They're not, if you break your ankle in the UK, you go to the emergency room, you get patched up, and you got a pretty good chance of coming out with a good result. If you come to our hospital, you've often had a broken bone for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, deformed, infected. And so we're fighting a very difficult pathology. And then we have limited resources. We're on a budget, so we don't have all the gizmos and gadgets to get a great job done, but we have enough to tackle difficult problems. We have 10 to 15 surgeons. Myself and the chief who initially set this hospital up 25 years ago, the only foreigners. The rest of the surgical staff, nursing staff, are all Khmer, Cambodian. And so we help facilitate, but ultimately it's the Cambodian surgeons and nurses doing the treatment. We teach and train a lot, so we have university students and surgical trainees with us. And we have a lot of foreign teams coming as well, right? So we do have visitors coming from the States and Canada, Singapore, Australia. They come for a week, they bring their own specialist skills, whether it's spine surgery, microsurgery, and they help teach the Cambodian staff to learn new skills when they come. So that's our little hospital. When it comes to explaining global surgery, it's very much like Bitcoin Cash, right? It's completely decentralized. There is no owner, there's no leader, there's no one person that says, I call the shots, right? It's an amalgamation of lots of different projects in different parts of the world. So you'll have, big universities in the States and the UK, Oxford, Harvard, Toronto will have their own kind of global surgical programs where they teach people who come to their courses about the problems that are occurring. Then you'll have little NGOs doing their bits and pieces, like our little hospital. You'll have bigger projects, MSF and other, bigger organizations doing their bits and pieces. It's even up to the UN and the World Health Organization have now taken on this and put global surgery as a priority. But there's no one in charge, right? There's no one to say, like, I call the shots. The money is in the North and in the West, and that's often where that dictates policy, that dictates what gets funded, who gets to go where, that type of thing. But governments are taking it on board. Like, there's a big drive now for, governments in low-income countries to start having surgical planning, to start having policies towards how are they going to develop sustainable surgical systems within their countries. How are they going to train the next generation of surgeons and anesthetists and obstetricians? How are they going to provide the emergency care? And so there is a movement, right? But it's very much like everybody doing their own thing and trying to help each other out. I mean, the difference between BCH and crypto versus global surgery, I would say that although it's completely decentralized, there's a genuine heart for, like, there's no animosity, right? Everyone's in it together.
The same team.
Everyone's trying to actually make the world a better place, whereas I think in crypto, everyone's trying to dominate each other. There's an element of that within global surgery, as with all things, the academic side and the clinicians, and they'll, bicker a little bit. But it's for the goodness of humanity, whereas I'm not sure I can say that necessarily about all your forks and all your splits. I don't know.
Yes, it's certainly its own little world. It's one of those things that it just always, I'm endlessly mind blown about how the world is bigger than we can comprehend. And so there's just whole movements and aspects of society and so forth that you would just never know existed until you get into that world or you have some incidental contact with it. And then you just discover, like, this whole I'm sure there's, conferences and networking and forums and all this stuff going on as well, right? With the global surgery. Like when you say it's decentralized, what are we talking about here? Every country would have its own conferences and hospitals with a specific focus on that, or it's more scattergun than that?
It's even more it's even more scattergun than that. It's a group of do-gooders in various parts of the world with their own various projects. Some are more mature than others, right? So there are, like I said, there are universities and there are professors of global surgery now. So there's tenure in this within the research side, and then there's special parts of the World Health Assembly, and in Geneva they meet, and there's a whole section on global surgery and who are the delegates there, and there may be politicians, or there may be representatives from various countries about how they're going to solve these issues. And then you've got people who just surgical teams that will get some funding and they'll come to Cambodia, or they'll go to Gaza, or they'll go to the Mercy ships off the coast of Africa, and they say, hey, we're going to do a week's worth of surgery. And so it's very scattergun. There's no one system or one solution to solve it all, right? It's very haphazard.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And is there any lesson that you take away from that? Sort of like you said, in contrast to crypto, it's in maybe some ways the same and some ways differently. Is there any like parallel that you see, any lesson that you maybe have seen from the global surgery stuff that you think crypto could apply, or vice versa?
I think they both have the same problem of trying to make meaningful, impactful change. I think global surgery is probably doing better when it comes to adoption. I think the services are improving in parts of the world. I think we're understanding more about the issues and solving them with good ethical solutions. So, for example, 30 years ago, it would be perfectly normal for you as a surgeon to pick up some instruments, take an anesthetist, and go to another part of the world and say, I'm going to do some mission work, right? And you'd operate for a week on pathology that you're not used to, which is unethical, and you'd have no follow-up, and you'd have no way of knowing whether that patient has done better or not, but you'd pat yourself on the back and go home, right, and say you did a good job. And that's kind of banned and outlawed and really frowned upon now. And so I would say we're learning more, and we're doing a better job at actually implementing important changes. Whereas I think with crypto, it's still Wild West, right? You still see scams you'll see people lose their money. You'll see grifters and people trying to extort or whatever they're doing. And I think the difference is with global surgery, when you make an impact, you're seeing how it's affecting the lives of somebody who did not have, right? And you're impacting that community. Whereas in crypto, we haven't really impacted a community to say, hey, actually with crypto, your banking situation and your finances and your trading and everything has suddenly become easier and better for your community, right? We haven't seen that level of improvement in the lives of others. And I think that's where crypto is failing. Is it's so focused on the glamour of it and the centralized exchanges and the big adverts and the crypto.com stadiums and whatever, right? And all the adverts that go on. I don't know whether you can actually say it's after 15 years it's really helped anybody.
Net positive.
Yeah, what has it? Whereas I can say in 15 years, the global surgery, in fact, yeah, it has. I mean, I can see it right now, and I can see it in Cambodia. There is improvements. So I think that's where crypto is it's lost its inspiration, I would say. And I think it's important to get that back somehow.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd love for BCH to make an impact in the lives of others.
I think we are, but just at a very, very small scale at the moment. You sort of have to take the wins where they come at the moment. And as you're explaining this, it is really sort of taking me back to the fact that Bitcoin was such an ideological project. I mean, BCH still is, right? But the whole crypto scene came it was very, very ideological, very, anti-censorship, very bank the unbanked, very bring financial services to the developing world and so forth. And those strands of it are still in there, right? They're still discussed, they're still mixed around and so forth. But the rest of it, I'll say, has so much come to dominate the discussion. Those humanitarian elements are far, far harder to find these days, even with a far bigger and wealthier crypto community, which maybe it's just inevitable as things grow, they sort of spread out into a more diverse range of interests, or maybe we lost something along the way there.
I think also, I think crypto is a much harder challenge, right? Because it's the political ideology behind it, which was the foundation for it, right? Is challenging a very powerful governmental institutional system, right? Whereas global surgery, no one's going to say, hey, you shouldn't help that poor patient, have a better life, right? That's very uncontroversial. You're not stepping on anyone's toes by making somebody have a better outcome to their disease. Whereas crypto's got a much bigger battle to genuinely make an impact and provide that banking and freedom aspect. Actually is a much bigger fight with a much bigger opposition. And so I think that's probably why, one of the reasons why crypto struggled. And obviously the second reason is it become a bit of a shit show. Let's face it.
Yeah, we're in clown world all over the place, but certainly
global surgery hasn't become that yet. We haven't gone down that route yet. We're not selling random tokens.
Well, you could do, mate. You could. Well, now you just hit on you're handing out free ideas here, mate. Careful what you're suggesting. The global surgery coin is going to be launching as we speak.
SURG, right? SURGE.
Surge. Yeah, exactly. Surge. It's a perfect fun. Everyone will be signing up for that. I saw Sam Altman was making some more statements about WorldCoin as well the other day, and it just made me think like he's still cracking away on that scam, even as after he's harvested a bunch of people's private info and then not really done anything with it, and then he's still going. I don't know why he isn't just focused on winning the AI war. He also has to run his crypto scam, but he was. So yeah, you kind of can't stop it. It's a bit of fighting the ocean in that respect, I think.
Yeah, the sadness. The sadness is Satoshi had the answer, right? And the fact that it's all fragmented into a million different coins. The first guy had the answer. It was there, right? And it could have been adopted, and it could have by now had a significant impact. And all these, smaller, more obscure projects, it just detracts from the main message.
Yes, very much so. Okay, so we've covered the global surgery kind of stuff, and then you said the publishing and research papers bit is a whole different kettle of worms right there. So we're zooming in now onto that bit. Explain the journey there and what inspired you to crack on with this part of the problem.
So this is a problem that I've obviously stumbled across through my career as a researcher, right? As a clinician, we try and do some research. We try and produce new knowledge and disseminate it. And then through global surgery, you want that as well. But it basically has become a very centralized, extremely extorted kind of industry. So the publishing industry essentially is where publishers control all the outlets of how a scientist can produce and disseminate their research. And how it works is for peer review. The scientist, let's say in my field, a surgeon will spend a year or 2 or 3 years writing an article and doing a fair amount of hard graft to get this work out there. And then they will write it up into a meaningful paper, and they'll submit it to a publisher. And the publisher will then send it out to peer review. And the peer reviewer is often a member of our own community, right? Because the only person who can peer review my work is going to be somebody within that knowledge set. But they'll review for free. because they believe they're helping their own scientific, community by, working on this. The publisher will take it back and say, okay, it's been peer reviewed, we accept it, we're going to publish it. And then they have two models to publish it. The first traditional model, which had gone on for hundreds of years, would be that the publisher will take all copyright of that material and say, hey, thanks for all your work, now we own it. And they'll put it behind a subscription paywall. So they'll own it, and then libraries can pay to access it, or an individual reader can pay now currently about $35 to $40 as a one-off payment to access that piece of work per reader.
For just that one article, that's not like a monthly subscription to the entire catalog or something like that.
No, that's right. So, for example, if I see a piece of work on a case that I'm working on tomorrow, and I research, I Google it, and there's a paper that I want, and it's behind this subscriber's paywall, I could access it by paying $35, and I'll get access to it, but no one else will, and everybody else would have to pay $35. It doesn't change, right? Or
you also can't mass subscribe to all of the pages.
Yeah, unless I've got an institutional login, if my library or my university has a password that I can get in. Otherwise, I'd have to pay a one-off rate. So that's the traditional model, which was going on well until the 1990s. And then everyone is saying, well, that's not open access, right? Research should be open access. It should be freely available to everybody, which is a correct sentiment. So the publisher said, all right, cool, we'll have this open access model. And the open access model is you do exactly the same thing. And when it's ready for publication, rather than put it behind a paywall, they'll ask the author to pay for open access. Because the journal says, okay, we're not going to get any more subscriptions. The author has to pay. And they call this an APC, or an article processing charge, or an author processing charge. And the price of this is now like $3,000. So the author...
So this is the doctor who spent 3 years writing all this, and who actually owned it. Why couldn't they just put it on a blog on the internet? Why couldn't they just go online and just Jeremy's surgery blog, bam, here's my research?
Right, because that's right. So there is a model. I'll explain that model, but ultimately it's for the peer review. The critical aspect, at least of we can say life science or health science, is peer review. You have the other scientific groups of mathematics, engineering, economy, and those type of sciences, may or may not have peer review. But certainly for health science and life science, peer review is a gold standard. If I can put up and say my vaccine works, and I'm just going to put it up there, and Donald Trump can put up his article saying that his vaccine works without any review, it's arguably dangerous. But secondly, you can't mess with that, right? I'm not saying peer review is perfect. In fact, it has multiple flaws, but at least it's one safety check when it comes to healthcare, right? That this work has been validated to a certain degree. It's been checked by somebody or 2 or 3 people that says, yeah, it checks out. And so the reason why healthcare professionals will submit it to a journal with reputation, and it has peer review, so that it's the science that you produced has been validated. So that's the reason why the journals have this monopoly over it, is that they control the reputation, and they can put a charge whatever they want. So they'll say, hey, that's $3,000, thank you. And so the researcher who's done all the work, who's put their hard hours into it, then has to fork out to make it open access, right? So it's crazy. And I'll give you a very specific example, which, if you Google my name, sadly. So I was working in Cambodia in 2013, and we produced this article about a common type of bacteria that was infecting our wounds. And, we researched it, we got the data, we said, look, this type of bacteria is here, and, it's quite common, and it's a problem. And so we published it in an article, in a journal, without realizing that this journal had a payment model that you had to pay, right? So we submitted it, it got accepted, we were like, great, let's get it out there. Even if it's behind a paywall, that's fine, right? At least it's out there. And then at the end of it, they said, well, that's $1,800 or something like that, or $800. And I was like, dude, I work in a charity that's, struggling for just day-to-day, expenses. We can't afford $800 to publish this. And by then, the article had already been put on the internet. So it's already out there. You can Google it. It's my name, blah, blah, blah. And I said, is there no discount or some kind of waiver because we're working in a low-income country for a charity? And they said, no, you have to pay. So I was like, sorry, man, we're not paying $800 to publish our work. And so they retracted it. So on the internet now, it'll say like, this piece of work retracted. And that's awful because as a scientist,
Does it look like dangerous or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you like what scammers these scientists pulled? They're given bad data, and so we were literally held hostage. And now it just says retracted, and it doesn't explain why. It doesn't say retracted because authors refused to pay $800, for extortion.
Publish that.
It just says retracted. So that's the industry that we've got to. And now we did a study before I started the journal. I did a study to just actually see what were the prices, how much are people actually having to pay, and the average was $3,000 within the global surgery context. So that's mind blowing. If I'm working in the UK, and that's crazy, but if I'm working in India or Africa, where my annual salary, my monthly salary is $100 a month, at best $300 a month. I'm expected to pay an entire year's salary, or I can beg for a discount, right? I'm begging for please, can you give me a waiver so I can publish in your journal? And the situation is ridiculous. The situation is so bad that people have been complaining about it within our industry for decades, right? These prices, you can Google from 2000 onwards, there's articles written about how ludicrously expensive it is to publish. How much money the publishing industry are making. So to put it in context, as I sent you that tweet.
Yeah, we've got a graph here. Jet can put it up. We've got the numbers that you sent to me here.
Elsevier are making more money on pure profit than Apple, Google, Facebook, and Zoom. Right. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The 5 or 6 leading publishers like Elsevier, Sage, Oxford University Press, Wiley, these guys have a complete monopoly over publishing, and they are making bank. They are making billions of dollars per year, and they are extorting the scientific industry because they're clamping down. So you cannot publish unless you pay us, and you must pay us $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Nature is now $8,000. I think there's one that's $12,000. So yeah, there will be some research that's got some funding from external sources that can afford that. But if I'm in Africa or I'm in Cambodia and I've discovered a new, treatment option for cases that I'm seeing that may be relevant to somebody who's seeing the same problem in another part of the world, I can't publish it. Even if I had the skill set to do all the research, I'm very lucky to have worked and studied in a university that's obviously taught research, science, and skills. But a clinician in Cambodia who's struggling to make money, who doesn't have research skill set, and even if had the motivation to work all this, is not going to pay $3,000 or $1,000 or even $500 or even $100 to publish their work. So it completely cuts off 80% of the world. So it's absolutely insane. And so there's been 2 major solutions to this. People have complained and they've written articles about it and in big journals. But and I personally have boycotted it. I will not publish again. I've published my 2025 articles now, right? Scientifically peer-reviewed pieces of work in various aspects of orthopedics and surgery. But I refuse now. I will not be an author until this problem is solved and until there is equity and that somebody who's working next to me in Africa or in Cambodia can publish has the same potential to publish. I will not participate in this scam, right? Whereas a lot of the academics, even within global surgery, are kind of like stuck. They have to publish in these articles, in these journals, because otherwise there's no career progression for them. There's no way to get their research out. So there's 2 major solutions that have occurred. One is called Sci-Hub. Have you come across that?
I've heard the name.
So Sci-Hub is, I think, Russian-based hackers. And what they did was they essentially hacked all these paywalls of all these journals and opened up, all these articles. Technically,
great effort, guys.
Cannot say, but yeah, they basically opened up the whole the whole journal kind of paywall and put all those articles out for free, right? And highly illegal, shall we say? And now they're on the run or struggling, and it's not a sustainable way of doing things, because ultimately the journal has done some effort, put it out there, and then if somebody just hacks it, then a journal can't thrive, right? Can't continue. But also it's illegal, so you can't do that. But,
like WikiLeaks, the global surgery version.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I can't say I've never used Sci-Hub, but I can't say that I have. It has liberated a lot of research, but it's not a sustainable way to do it. And then the second one, which is taken off to a certain degree, is ArcSIF. It's what you said earlier. Is why can't you just put it out on the internet? It's not peer reviewed. It's what we call a preprint. It's never been reviewed and it's just put out there. And so that's one model, but that hasn't taken off in healthcare and life science. So those are the two big.
Hang on. Let's dig into that a little bit, right? Because the story that you're telling me sounds like one I've heard a lot of times before. Okay, you have the New York Times, and then you have Twitter, and Twitter is a bit chaotic and a bit of a mess and a bit of disinformation or misinformation. But on the other hand, it's a bit of a chaotic free market, and some good shit comes out of it, right? So I'm seeing that same battle here, where it's like there's the button down, it's finance and crypto, right? There's the button down ones, and there's the upstarts, and maybe the upstarts don't have access to everything that's all checked and stamped the same way, but that's kind of the trade-off they're making, and they just run with it. And then over time they start winning, because even if it's pretty messy, it's just more efficient, and
I think with healthcare science and with the risk, like I said, with the risk of preprint and not peer reviewed, there's a challenge of like, well, how do you distinguish what's genuinely good advice and what's potentially dangerous, right? And so when I'm a doctor and I'm taking research to treat my patient, right, I need to have some element of credibility in what I'm looking at, right? I can't just go to Twitter, or I can't just go to a preprint and say, hey, this new idea has come out and I'm just going to try it. Now you could. But
hang on a second. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a different scenario we're talking about here, but people do that. Like on the last show, we just had Nopara talking about rejuvenators. You've had bodybuilders since the 80s doing their version of health science, which still carries on to this day and is kind of like parallel nutrition and health advice to what you would get if you started reading university textbooks, right? Now, obviously, if you go with them, a lot of the time they're ahead of the game. They actually have stuff that then later gets backed up by the institutional crowd, but there's a few messy incidents, in the process, right? And so I'm just saying, maybe if you're working at the New York hospital, you can't afford that, but you're in Cambodia, maybe you can, right? Maybe other people can.
Yeah, no, you're right in the sense that there's no harm in looking at other people's experiences and their knowledge that they're putting out there, and there are forums for that. But I think when it comes to actually validated science, like you'd be, and it doesn't matter whether you're in the USA or Cambodia, right? You're still treating somebody in front of you who expects you to know what you're doing and expects you to provide the best ethical care. So there has to be a middle. There has to be a ground where you can exchange science with other people, that you have some quality control. I'm not saying the preprint has no role, and I'm not saying peer review is perfect, but the gold standard, the accepted standard within our community, within healthcare, is that peer review is still the gold standard. Now, again, I'm not trying to change or argue with that. I'm not trying to say that peer review isn't the problem here. The problem is that the publishers are earning billions of dollars on the backs of peer review. The peer reviewer does it for free. In fact, I don't know any peer review that's ever been paid. And the publishers have managed over the last century to convince the scientific community that you do your peer review for the goodness from your own heart, and the authors will do their work from the goodness of their own heart, and we'll take all the profits, right? So the problem isn't peer review. The problem is that it's become unaffordable because somebody's controlling it. So yeah, we could have a debate about whether peer review is important or not, but I don't think that's the issue, right?
I'm saying you can start up, and this is, I guess, what you're about to tell me. You can start up Saqib's blog and bring up your 5 mates who you know are pretty credible, and then you start building a sort of alternative peer-reviewed system there. It doesn't start out with the credibility and clout of the others, but on the other hand, you're not harvesting the billions, right?
Yeah, so that's right. Saqib's blog is the Journal of Global Surgery.
Exactly. So tell me about that.
Ultimately, it's a WordPress blog, man. And literally, that's what it is. The idea is that I did not believe, and I still do not believe, that it costs $3,000 to put something on the internet, which is what they're charging. And through this process of not believing that, they came across a solution to the problem that I think no one has come up with yet, and everybody I've spoken to has so far not yet been able to find a flaw with it, and it's now running and has the potential to solve this issue. So it comes the solution comes with 4 critical pillars, right? These four aspects of the solution are all required. Without one of those, the idea fails, right? So the first solution is that it does not cost $3,000 to put something on the internet. And so in 2020 or 21, I embarked on a journey to create a journal software system, manuscript submission portal, that made it as cheap as possible for a author to submit work, for a reviewer to review it, and the editorial team to check it and publish it on the internet as cheaply as possible, but maintain a really high standard, right, in terms of production, bells and whistles, etc. And so that was when I started my first Flipstarter. But I said, I can make something better, right? And so from $3,000, I've created a system that charges now $76, right? $76 calculates how much it costs for the server to run, for you getting a DOI, an object identifier reference, getting peer reviewed, putting it on a PDF, HTML, the whole thing. So it costs $76, which I think is a massive reduction anyway, right? That's huge. That's I don't know.
You need to bump that up, mate. You've already got a 10x advantage. You need to make it 250.
Yeah, exactly. That's a bear market. That's a bear market journal article right there. That in itself was like insane. I was like, dude, I can prove, through transparency, like how much it costs to get this down there. And then the second innovation was that, you can't say it's a $76 cost when the most important aspect of it is the peer review. That's the bit that you're paying for. Everything else is just jargon, right? Everything is just making it look pretty, but the peer review is the critical component to peer review publishing. And so the $76 has to include a payment to the peer review. You cannot say it costs $76 without acknowledging that the peer review gets paid. And so we're the first journal, I believe, there may be one or two others, that actually pays the peer reviewer, irrespective of whether the reviewer rejects or accepts the article. So there's no kind of financial incentive for the reviewer to do something. We're going to pay you. And it's not a lot, but it's better than zero. And so it's $10, right? So every reviewer has the opportunity to earn some money. And to be honest, $10 for a couple of hours work in England isn't terrible. I'll get a cup of coffee and a donut for that. If you're doing peer review in another part of the world, $10 could be something useful, right? You do 10 peer reviews a year, that's $100. So that innovation was critical, because I was like, you cannot sustain a peer review publishing journal without paying. So the third innovation was that even with the $76, it's still too much for an author. I cannot charge an author in Cambodia $76. It's not acceptable for the author to do all the work and pay at the end of it. And so this is where the crowdfunding model comes in. The journal publishes the article with the paywall. but it transparently says it cost us $76. Here's our running cost. This is what it cost us. We're not making any profit, but this is what it cost us. And now it's up to you, the reader, the community, to chip in. This work has been done. It's been validated. It's been reviewed in parts of the world, and the reviews have been paid. If you want access to this, please pay $1. Please pay $5. You'll have first access, but you'll also pay down the paywall. And once enough people pay the $76, it's open for everybody. And it becomes a community-owned piece of work. And now you've paid for it. The reader has paid for it, which actually adds a bit of accountability, because if the articles are shit, the reader you don't develop a readership, the readership doesn't pay for it, the journal doesn't get its money back, it doesn't become sustainable. So you're actually at behest of the reader, right? So that, again, has never been done before. There's only been two models before. Is one the author pays up front, or the reader pays, or the library pays a certain amount, but gets nothing back for the community. This one is completely inspired by Flipstarter to a certain degree, but like, you pay it down, right? You pay the money back. And then the last one, which without this one, the whole thing fails, right? It has to have a payment network that allows borderless, permissionless, decentralized micropayments. It cannot work if the payment network is built on PayPal or Visa or credit card. Right? You cannot take a micropayment from any of those organizations. Half the world doesn't have access to all that stuff. So if I publish in Cambodia and somebody in Palestine wants it, they're not going to pull out their credit card, right? So it has to have a payment network that facilitates that instant, cheap microtransactions. And if you look down the top 100 on CoinMarketCap of all the currencies, none of them are designed to do that, with the exception of Bitcoin Cash. And arguably, you may say, some Litecoiners may say that we're kind of doing the same thing, right? But there is only, realistically, Bitcoin Cash is the one that fills all that criteria. And without that payment network, I can't say the journal is completely accessible to everybody in the world. It must have a payment network, and it must be able to take 10 cents. It cannot charge somebody $5 to access a piece of work, right? It has to be a micropayment. And so without Bitcoin Cash at the end of it, all other three pillars fail. Like it doesn't produce the solution that I want. So by building Bitcoin Cash as well as fiat, you can't just say it has to be crypto. You have to be accessible to everybody. But by building in Bitcoin Cash and then using that as our economy. So with Bitcoin Cash, we pay our peer reviewers in Bitcoin Cash. So we've sent $10 of BCH to India, Zambia, Malawi. The list of peer reviews is growing, and Bitcoin Cash is just spreading around. And what's amazing is that we also give the author $2. We say, hey, look, here's $2 of Bitcoin Cash. You can use it to access your own article now. So just recently we had an author. Yeah. So we had an author who we paid $2 because, there's often multiple authors to a piece of work. It's not just one guy. It's 5 or 10 potentially authors. So it's like, okay, here's $2. You can spread it around amongst yourselves. If you don't know what to spend it on, spend 10 cents, pay down your own article, and you've got access to the PDF, and you've got, open access to your piece of work that you can share. And so one person did. It was amazing. Like they got paid $2 and they paid it 10 cents back to access their work. And they pay down the paywall, and some reviewers have spent their $10 to pay down other pieces of work. And so it does become an economy, right? A micro economy of global scientists using Bitcoin Cash to earn and pay for other people's work. And so it's just starting, right? We've produced 6 or 7 articles now. Most of them have been paid off pretty quickly, and the idea is growing. One of the biggest challenges was that although I produced these 4 pillars of technical innovation, how do you get buy-in? And the most important stakeholders are the authors and the reviewers, and now the readers, because scientists are generally conservative, right? They're not ready to break the system. Whereas I've been like, we've got to break the system because the system is awful. And through a lot of networking, discussions, collaborations, we're starting to get some buy-in. We've had 2 very big organizations partner with us now, global surgery organizations that said, "Hey, this is a model that can liberate research for everybody within our community," and so they've signed up as partners. We're getting a stronger editorial board. The movement is starting to develop. People are recognizing that it's there. So we're now at the point now where we're building our reputation, which is very important for a journal. We're building our readership, our authorship, our reviewer base. And these things take time. Like, you can't change the world tomorrow. But it's been a 3-year journey, and it's now starting to roll forward with momentum. So I don't know what will happen next. I mean, there's still challenges. I still don't like the platform that I built. Like, it's great. Like, it's amazing, but I want it to be even better. I want the readership to start realizing that actually, if you want to break the system, you have to pay a few dollars, pay a cup of coffee, pay something to contribute to liberate science for everybody, right? So that's mindset and culture we have to change. But yeah, it's getting there. Like, we're almost another year. I think we'll be in a very strong position to start challenging the publishers and say, "Look, dude, like, here's a better system."
Wow, this is amazing. So doing this all obviously alongside your work at the hospital and involvement in everything else, right? This is kind of running parallel. Is this like your side hustle, or is it like you would want to do this full time if there was an opportunity for it, or what's the game plan with that? Is it just you, or
it doesn't? I've got I have a whole bunch. Like, don't tell. Like, my wife's not very happy with me. Shall we say? Like, I've got so many side gigs at project. It doesn't take long. I've been building websites and applications and doing stuff since I was like 16, and everything I've ever built, I've designed to the point where it should be relatively easy to maintain. And so it's not that much work once it's built, right? And of course, you can keep improving it. But to run a journal, it's probably 2 or 3 hours a week as an editor, right? You need an editorial board and things like that. But just as an editor, you review the work. So I'm currently the editor-in-chief, and it's not my goal to be the editor-in-chief of a journal. And I would love to be able to pass it on to somebody who does want to do that work. And the editor actually gets paid a little bit for their work within this model. They get $10 or something per article that's published. It's not a lot, but it's something. So my idea isn't that I continue to be the editor-in-chief of this journal. The idea is that once it's fully coded, it's still in beta, but once it's robust enough that I can hand over the editorial logins and say, "Look, you can here's the system for you to be able to manage all the manuscripts yourself." For this journal, it has been pseudo-designed to be cloned. So there is some scalability aspect to it. So, for example, if a second journal, not global surgery, says that, the Journal of American Public Health, whatever, right? African Public Health says, we want a similar model. I can copy and paste it and set them up with zero surcharge. They can start running it themselves. And set up their own board, and it's all designed within the front end of the manuscript manager that they can do it all on their own. So if it was to be successful, I would love for 2 or 3 similar journals to develop over the next 3 years. And then I would like for the industry to finally realize there's a better model. I'm not saying my manuscript submission system is the way to go. There is some flaws with it. But I would like for the big publishing industry players to realize they can't continue this ludicrous payment system, and I would love for the prices to drop, and then I can say the job is done. Maybe with this side gig, I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but that would be great. Like, if we can reduce the payments and we can liberate the science through this model. And I would love for Bitcoin Cash to be the reserve currency for scientific, dissemination, right? It's the currency that you use to help pay each other for the science that you're producing. That, I think, no other cryptocurrency is in the position to do that. And the fact that the journal has started with BCH, it means BCH has a head start. So if we can produce 5 journals that are all disseminating Bitcoin Cash and micropayments are being paid to pass it across them, it would be nice if it is the kind of accepted currency, the pseudo accepted currency for this type. Now, of course, you can have other payment networks and other cryptos, and I'm sure people, if it does take off, will build their own token for it. But it would be nice if you got the head start.
I just made the most recent article open access, and wow, that was so smooth. Like, fantastic. I love that, and it feels good too.
Honestly, the tech is it's a good. I had a recent, so I have, thankfully I've got a board now, and some of the board members are very active on the journal, and they're pushing me hard. Right, for a year and a half, this project kind of died down as I was doing my multiple other projects. But a few of the board members have been kicking my ass a bit, and the one arranged a meeting with a similar journal in East Africa, and their board had big problems with their manuscript software. And sadly, I only got to know about it recently, but they've just paid for a commercial manuscript submission system for the past 6 months. They've onboarded to this other one, and they're paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per year plus additional fees. And I looked at their commercial system and the thing that I've built, and honestly, like, all the bells and whistles I have matches theirs or is better. And so the system that I've built, it is nice. It's smooth. It's easy to use. The editorial side is a bit clunky, but I'm going to solve that as I go. But from a reader perspective, the BCH payments is amazing. One of the problems when I first had the idea was, how am I going to accept BCH payments, and how am I going to integrate it into WordPress and the total fee at $76, and how is it going to cut down? And I got some quotes from some BCH developers, and it was extremely expensive. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this. And then I came across prompt cash. It's easy as anything. Like, you just send the API over, it gives you the QR code back, and it has enough information that passes back and forth that once the payment's received, it sends a message back to the journal saying that this journal article has received $2 from this particular reader. And so I can credit the reader, I can drop the paywall, it's instant, it works very well. And what's been amazing is that I have done zero onboarding to the global surgery community, right? I've not told them how to use Bitcoin Cash, but I just said, like, you need to get a Bitcoin Cash wallet and you need to put your address in and then you'll get paid. And then this author in India just, suddenly I saw 10 cent paid. I was like, all right. He figured it out. I didn't tell him what wallet to buy or use, rather. I didn't tell him how to do it. But he's obviously paid 10 cents. So, yeah, there could be some better onboarding tutorials. But the BCH aspect works really well. Better than PayPal. Like PayPal, you've got to go and then log in, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's nice. I think it works well.
So I'll just read out a couple here from the latest publications so people maybe get a sense of what we're actually talking about here. So you've got mixed mucinous carcinoma of the breast in young female patient, case report from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 authors. Like you said, you can clearly have a bunch of people involved. Analysis of the impact of GILS, gas insufflation-less laparoscopic surgery in selected rural hospitals in India. That one with 3 authors. A rare case of tricholemal carcinoma in a sun unexposed area. 3 authors there as well too. And a case report of multiple primary squamous cell carcinomas along the Mekong River, assessing the impact of chronic arsenic exposure, from 4 authors there. So, and that last one was submitted about 1 year ago in 18th September 2023. So, yeah, you're getting one article every few months, but you're expecting that to ramp up. You're saying it's kind of starting to catch on a little bit once this idea is spreading out.
Yeah, it's starting to catch on. So Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, a lot of the case reports have come from clearly some pathology department in Ethiopia, I think in Addis, have picked up on the journal and figured out this is a nice place to send their case reports. What I love is, I'm expecting what I would hope is about 40 to 50 publications per year. That would be like your goal, my kind of, if we can do that, which is 10 publications every 3 months, so we can produce a quarterly issue. Yeah, that would be the aim. There's certain barriers like getting. You want your journal to be indexed by really prominent index archive. Medline or PubMed is the gold standard, and that takes 2 years of regular publishing. And once you become PubMed indexed, then I think the amount of authors submitting is going to go through the roof, because that's really what they want. They want a journal that's indexed in these big archives. So it will take a year or two to get to that level. But if we can produce 40 per year, it'll be great. And it's becoming natural now. So, for example, we've just received an article from Cameroon. Like, we have no connection to Cameroon in terms of the board, in terms of who we've advertised to or marketed to, like zero. I don't know how they found out about it, but it's amazing. Like, we have an organic submission from the west coast of Africa with a very nice paper, as far as, as me as an editor is going to say. It's now being reviewed in India and Southern Africa. And if they get that publication and then they see that it gets paid off, right? That $76 of their work has been valued to $76 by the rest of the world. I think the appreciation that set of researchers will have in that part of the world is immeasurable. Like, previously, they would have had to pay $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. Previously, they would have had to give their copyright away to someone else. Now they're saying, okay, we'll give it to you and you can hold it for $76. But then they realize that some parts of the world have valued their work enough that they'll pay $76 to make it free for everybody. That feeling and appreciation, I think, will then expand to other parts of Cameroon and other scientists, and they'll realize that this is a great model, and then we'll get more submissions, right? And I think it will snowball. That's the theory. This is very much like game theory. Like, it's there's a game 3 years ago, and now it's becoming, palpable. But like I said, I think it takes another year or two. And my idea is that, once you get BCH Bliss, going 2025, 26, I'm hoping by then I can be on your podium and say it's done.
Yes.
I'm not going to say it's done until the job is complete.
Oh, amazing. And so obviously this all sounds, quite altruistic and high-minded and so forth, right? But the capitalist part of me is saying, okay, $3,000 to $76, you've made a big reduction there. What about bumping the numbers up a little bit, get a profit margin in there? And then you said, like, the board members and other people involved, maybe you can use that money, obviously, for good. You can up the payments to the peer reviewers. You can up the payments to the authors. Maybe you can have some, funding of your hospital, or select other endeavors as a result of the money that is coming in for the journal articles. What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, I think it's all possible. Right now, it's very much like back of the napkin mathematics, and very much, there's so much that we're challenging here, and there's so much innovation on every aspect that I really don't know whether the $76 is an accurate number. It's based on a lot of assumptions. It's based on how many papers that we get, how many we reject, how many we accept. And so a lot of it is very much in testing. Now, after a year, and we can say, actually, $76, we're not sustainable on $76. It may be that it's 96. It may be that it's 110. I have no idea. It may be that no one pays, right? And this is going to be the slight test that I was talking to with the board just a few days ago. This is such an experiment. Like, we don't know if any readers are actually going to pay. Like, the readers'
they have so far, right? You've got 6 or 7 articles that are paid.
Right, they have so far, and you don't know how long that will continue. These genuine readers, Are they great? I mean, it's amazing. Like, firstly, it's the Bitcoin Cash community that's covering this, and it's amazing. And is it sustainable if we start producing, one every week? It's not just the BCHs that have to be paying, right? It has to be the genuine readers. Now, maybe there are scientists within the BCH community that are really happy to be reading these articles and actually enjoying them, which I hope is what's happening. But really, it has to require a readership adoption from the scientific community. The global surgery community says, I'm in America, I see a new paper from the journal, I'm going to put $5 into it. And that cultural change that the reader has to take is something that we haven't proven yet. Now, I hope that happens. And I hope, to answer your question, that we have so many readers that these articles get paid down within a day. And if they get paid down within under a day, then you can say, well, maybe there's scope to increase the how much we charge, and maybe there's more money that we can spend on other things. But first, we have to prove that $76 is within the remit of the readership. So there's a lot of permutations to go, right? It's extreme. I have no idea. Like, honestly, this is made up stuff. It's an ideology that I'm trying to prove, that I'm trying to take down $1 billion industry, or at least prove that the $1 billion industry is wrong. I'm trying to liberate science for the masses. And so a lot of the assumptions are going to change for sure. I honestly have no idea. And I'm still prepared for failure. Like, I still think this, in a year's time, I can look back and no one takes it up and everyone ridicules it, or it doesn't take off enough. I can say that I've given it a really good attempt, and I still think it's the best model that I've come across.
I have one suggestion.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to be able to sort the publications by which ones are still locked.
Yeah, I think that's on my to-do list. Now that yeah, that's right. What I want to produce on the site is like a tab that tells you like which ones are still open, and at the moment it's not very clear and it's not very visual to say, hey, like we're down $76 or we're down $50, and it's a nice position to be in, because 3 months ago the problem was getting authors to submit. And then 2 months ago, the problem was getting reviewers to actually review the damn thing. And now the problem is like the marketing side of it. I was like, well, now we're getting publications. How do we get the message out to readers, both on the website and through social media, that you can pay this down? And so I 100% agree. The challenge now is like making it easy for people to see that they can pay things off. And it's a nice feeling once you open it up. So yeah, I think that's, I'm not happy with my front page. There's a few bits and pieces that need to improve. So it's a great suggestion, and it's definitely on the to-do list.
I will say that I've contributed to a couple of these articles, and like you say, like I don't really know. I had a bit of a read, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know the specifics of what's going on there. But I think
I don't know, man. Mucinous carcinoid breast cancer.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. A bit of light reading before bed. Sometimes when I'm bored of reading RBTC, then the Telegram groups that can help.
Educate yourself a bit, man.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there's a lot of potential here, because I'm willing to do that, even just to support the adoption of BCH, basically, never mind anything else. And I think the BCH community in general can be quite, like Bitcoin even, since the early days, was known for having those kind of altruistic ways of outreach, right? Like we said, but especially in the early days, it was a bit more humanitarian focused, and this is a perfect example of it. 76 is not, millions of dollars. Maybe it is, to the people involved, right? In some cases, but for the world at large, you can get through a good amount of articles if just the BCHs on the Telegram chip in a few dollars here and there, and before you know it. So yeah, I think that like you say, that wouldn't probably be sustainable forever, maybe, but probably that is enough to create the seed. That's enough to get the wheel turning. And if you're attracting authors and peer reviewers and readers, then it will build a network effect. And I can see this going really well.
I think you're right that the journal is right now very heavily reliant on the goodwill of the BCH community for the payment model to proof of concept, and the BCH community has been great in supporting it. And one of the nice things is, yes, it's $76, but $20 to $22, possibly even $32 of that isn't going to the journal, is actually being used to pay the peer reviewers, so that you're actually distributing BCH to parts of the world that have never seen or touched BCH or and so it's at least $20 to $22 is going elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely added incentives for the BCH community to support it, and it's nice to be in that position where you are supported by one community whilst trying to onboard another, right? And in a way that is like you said, very circular. It's the idea is it's supposed to be sustainable. It's a whole microeconomy, and research will continue to be published. Like, it's not like there's an end to this. Research needs to continue for humanity, right? As long as we're around on this planet. So there is a lifespan of this that should continue. It's I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's a good start.
Yeah. No, this is amazing. This is definitely something I have been keeping an eye on. You say this is 3 years old, and I remember, I think the initial Flipstarter, I might have been a contributor, or maybe I wasn't, but I remember Emergent Reasons hyping it up at the time. He definitely has a talent for finding things that seem a bit like off the wall, or can't really, make sense of them if you're not him at that exact moment. But given a little time, it's like, wait, he's really onto something here. I do remember that. And because that's also that was only shortly after the podcast started as well, too. So it wasn't the time that I was in the best position to be getting involved in a lot of other stuff, because I was focused on what I was doing, getting the podcast going. But I do remember that, and I'm glad the project's still here. And like you say, these things build traction, and then gradually, then suddenly, I'll be happy to give any announcements out on the show if you want to let me know, like, we've just published our 10th article, or we've just had 5 reviewers, or whatever, anything like that. I'm sure listeners will be interested to hear how it comes along. Is there anything else?
The next,
go on.
Yeah, I mean, the next milestone for the journal will be our first issue, because normally, the idea is that we get 10 published articles that have been opened, and then we create an issue. Now, an issue really is just it's just metadata, because you're not actually going to print an issue, but it's just a matter of putting it into a. You could. No, I just saw the cost of it. But in terms of from a scholarly perspective, once you have your first issue, you can get your ISSN number. You can have a little bit more credibility within the journal system, that you have page numbers and issue number and a volume number and all the kind of metadata that other traditional journals use. And so once we have that for me, that's a big milestone. Like, all right, you've produced an issue now, so now you're a serious journal. You're not just a.
I can see that the physical copies, I think that's something you should consider and take seriously, because again, that's something, even if it was more expensive, even if it was, I don't know, $10 or $20 of BCH, I'd buy one just to have it shipped to my door, and be like, wow, this is pretty cool, another little aspect. And then that's driving revenue. So you've got a bit of you might get a dedicated audience of Bitcoin Cash medical enthusiasts.
I would put a journal, like especially a first issue, just on my living room coffee table, where people are going to be like, what the hell is that? And then I get to be like, look at this crazy thing. The world's huge, huh?
Yeah, I think as a first issue, you could do it like a special edition print.
Exactly.
I don't think it'd be as a regular print, you wouldn't necessarily go for that. But definitely as a first, if it was to genuinely become a thing.
And here's where those tokens come in.
Surge.
Yeah, put a full-page advert in the front. I'll tell you what, do that, and then I'll buy an advert slot in it, and I'll put on the 3rd page of the journal, Bitcoin Cash podcast, listen in, blah, blah, blah. Now I know my readers are understanding BCH because they're already using it. I grew up watching my dad, have stack thousands of copies of these articles and stuff on his bookshelf at home. I'm very familiar with medical journals, and the physical copies sometimes have something to them. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely think about it as a special edition. One thing that could become interesting now, again, extrapolating into ridiculous thoughts, but if you did have a big scientific community, the scientific community that have picked up on BCH, and even some of the board members and the reviewers are asking about BCH and are asking, like, how does this work? What is crypto? They're obviously very smart, intellectual people who have their mind on other things, but you may end up getting a listenership or readership of new crypto enthusiasts who do have a Selene wallet or a type of wallet, who have no other interest in crypto apart from what to do with their $10 of BCH. So one of the reviewers asked me, what do I do with this? And I was like, well, you can pay off an article that's coming out next week.
Yeah.
But people will ask, well, what can I do with my BCH? And so there could be a new audience of scientists that are interested.
We're working on that. We'll wait until we get jogs into Selene, so all the Selene users can be paying down the articles. That's a good.
That would be good, actually. Yeah, if you had an app that could just within a wallet saying what articles need paying down, that would be quite nice.
Yeah, one tap, donate $1, bam, right here.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, that could work.
We're gonna need to tie things together. Is there anything else you wanted to say about this Jogs project before we move on?
No, I'm just I'm grateful for the flip starter from 2021, and I think there's a second one in 22, and I'm grateful for the support that we've had. And my instinct was correct. When I met Emergent Reasons and the altruism and the sincerity of the BCH community, I think you've all demonstrated that throughout the years that I've been doing this project. So just to say thank you.
We do have him in the chat saying we should ask about the long tail model of the paywall.
He needs to stop asking about that.
What is it?
Emergent Reasons has always asked, there's a $76 paywall. What if somebody wants to pay $100 or $120 towards that particular article? And he wants this long tail so you can keep on donating to this article. And I keep shutting him down on the idea. It's a nice idea. But the problem is that that I think the idea that he wants to donate more is to recognize the research work that's been done rather than the journal, right? But the problem is the journal is the one that's taking the money, not the researchers.
Doesn't have to. You can just pass it on through to the research.
It becomes complicated, and it becomes unethical. It becomes a real issue. Once a journal is starting to give money back to an author, and there's multiple authors, you can open up a whole can of worms on that side of things. So it's a nice idea, but it practically becomes very difficult to manage. And so what I was suggesting is that one idea is if somebody wants to support the journal but can't be bothered with every article $76, what I could potentially set up is a nested fund. So there's a fund for articles, and as soon as an article comes out, it just automatically deletes from the nest.
Yes.
So, for example, somebody wants to put $500 in, and the next 6 articles will be automatically paid off, right? So that's one idea that you could do.
Well, that's what we have. That reminds me of it's the same thing happening on a Fifth of Gaming. Is you can just sponsor up the guilds, and then boom, the next X tournaments is the same thing. This is a really interesting aspect of BCH that has been kind of underexplored, and I haven't seen too much of this in crypto, but I think the BCH community is starting to get onto something here with this idea of pre-funding stuff. Like the BCH economy is so efficient compared to every other kind of form of money, and even a lot of the other crypto communities, because they don't actually have that much P2P economy. It's all speculation or gambling or whatever, which is that you can by using flip starters, you can allocate money at the time that it's needed, although you usually fund something and then it runs for so long. But with a Fifth of Gaming and like this Jogs idea, you're funding things ahead of time. And then if the price goes up with the BCH already sitting there, it funds things even further into the future, if you know what I'm saying. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. What about just the authors of the article can all put a BCH address next to their name in the research paper? Is that an ethical violation, or could you see that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't thought about it. The author does put in, when they sign up, there is an accounting system where they put in their BCH address. So we do actually have the BCH address of the author if they want to claim the $2. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of potential open questions of where this could go, and this is why I have an editorial board. John's on it as a non-scientist, but non-surgeon, global surgeon.
On Medico, yeah.
But these kind of ethical questions are really kind of beyond me, require a lot of insight and thought. And I don't want this to be my journal, my project. This has to be very driven. It has to be led by people who have thought about all the consequences of these potential issues. Even the idea of paying peer reviewers is a question that needed to be answered. Like, is that ethical? So all these things that it's hard for me to say, but I hope it's not me that's answering them in the long term.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep an eye on this.
You listen, John.
Goes.
Your job.
I think he's got enough on his plate as well. Now, when it comes to that, speaking of the old emergent reasons, tell me about how you're involved in general protocols. You're not really like an employee there, right? I guess, but you're more of a contractor, or what's your involvement with what they've going on?
I don't know what my official role is in terms of whether General Protocols has employees. They have a system where they have a team that works contracted hours, should we say. And so I've been involved with GP for about 3 years now, I think. The time has flown by very quickly. Again, this was part of John onboarding me to BCH, and every once in a while I'd ask, like, John, what is it that you do? And probably still to this day, I don't fully understand like how to define GP in its own entity. But every time he tried to explain it, I was like, I can't understand anything. He was talking about being a layer network between products and services, and GP is the layer between
like the retail hub, yeah.
The user facer and the network, right? And GP's in the middle of all these services that are going to come to fruition in the future. And this is whole new economy that hasn't been, developed yet. And I couldn't quite understand a lot of it. But these are my questions to John as he was teaching me about BCH. And there came a point in 2021 where I think D-Token was around, and D-Token at the time was starting to potentially drift and close, should we say. And it was at that point that John and I had this long conversation about the philosophy of BCH products and where it may be failing. Like, there wasn't a front-end user-facing product that was necessarily easy to use, that was making money. And I had this philosophy that you need, for GP to succeed, it needs to have a revenue system that's reliable, and a product that can showcase BCH and showcase all the software and technology that was behind the AnyHedge contract. And so we had these conversations, and then John essentially invited me to join GP to help develop that side of their business model as D-Token was coming to a close. And so really the idea of BCH Bull was started at that time. The idea being that AnyHedge is such a powerful contract, but it's it's a very unique contract that it has two sides to it that are very different at the time. That you have the speculators that just love trading, right? And they're ready for the volatility. And it's a completely different mindset to the other part of the NHEDGE contract, which is designed for the stability users who don't want volatility. And how do you create a product that combines the two to allow everyone to do what they want and produce volume in a way that allows BCH and BCH Bull at the time to succeed? So it's a difficult challenge to produce a product like that. And so BCH Bull started as the idea that we'll tackle the speculators first. Ultimately, crypto is about speculation. All the volume, all the trade, all the centralized and decentralized exchanges, it's all about the degens going for it. And so you needed a way that GP could produce a product that attracted BCH speculation. And so my role was to take the NHEDGE contract and produce a product. And so that's how it all started. Like in 2021, we de-token ended, and I worked with the GP team to create the BCH Bull brand, the user interface aspects of it. Obviously, the geniuses behind it had figured a lot of this out, but it's a matter of packaging it and putting it out there to the market. And we've done all right. Like I think BCH Bull has stood pretty well for the past 2 years. It's been growing in volume, in reputation, in brand recognition, in user experience improvements. Now with shorts, it's now really a competitive leverage platform. Like it really has a lot of competitive edge over some of the bigger players within the DeFi ecosystem. And with 24,000 contracts successfully redeemed, $100 million plus of volume, over $10 million now locked. It's a great product. And I think it's something the BCH community have rallied around and become proud of. I think it's good the GP's out there and produce it. GP were always a little bit anxious about being on the front end, but the idea was that no one else is going to do it. Like D-Token tried. To be fair, D-Token had a really good attempt, but you look around the BCH ecosystem, it's quite small, right? It's not a huge swath of developers waiting to go with their new ideas. So you have to do it yourself. And I think GP have done a very nice job. And for me, as a capitalist now, right, I've gone completely from being this, my whole life is to assist in the impoverished parts of the world. I've completely switched mindset to say, well, for BCH to truly succeed, it has to have success, right? It has to have commercial success, economic success. It has to be making money. No, you're not going to get new developers and new builders and new investment in until there's money in the system. And so BCH Bull idea was that if GP can get success from that, then we can build further, but also attract more development. And I think, again, similar to Jogs, we're kind of at this precipice where it's really starting to showcase what BCH can do. And I think it's attracting success, and hopefully more success will come.
Yes. No, I think it's very important, and it's been a fantastic part of the ecosystem. I'm always talking about them on the show. They're always, shout outs in the end of the show for the sponsorship and stuff. And they've just done so much on the technology, and because they've been around a long time as well too, with being through the splits and everything, they just kept plugging away at it, even while the rest of the ecosystem was falling apart, or things were not going, or people were moving on, or getting distracted. And so that's left them as one of the flagship things in this now we're seeing in this new era of BCH. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up, with BCH Guru and Fifth Gaming, and some of my favorites. Selene is getting better all the time. Obviously, there's loads of others. Journal of Global Surgery. All these products are starting to spin up and improve, but they take 2 or 3 years minimum to get to a nice MVP kind of beta stage, and then probably another 2 or 3 to really get some momentum, right? So BCH Bull is kind of at the forefront of that wave because it's had a little longer to cook. Do you have any insight on the native wallets that Emergent Reasons talked to me about at Bliss when I interviewed him? And for a long time, he's been so obsessed with that as an idea. I think it's one of his many ideas that maybe everyone else is kind of a bit out of the loop on until it starts coming to fruition. And then it's like, oh, that's what he was talking about, 5 years ago, right? So I've heard that they are committed to making some kind of
stuff ahead, right?
Yeah, exactly. I should play chess with him sometime. I imagine he's pretty good at it.
I have offered. I do play chess, but I don't think he plays. Unfortunately, he plays BCH.
NATO. Yeah, exactly. Stay focused.
I think. I mean, I'm more of a front end UI type of developer in terms of my designs, but from the back end BCH network perspective, I don't have too much insight apart from what the GP developers tell me. And ultimately, what they say, and said by others, is that it's so difficult to create products, apps, wallets within the BCH kind of programming system. The learning curve and the potential for new developers to come in is extremely challenging. And so even the creation of BCH Bull and the AnyHedge platform and everything behind it took a lot of expertise. And what GP's real major intention is now is, well, how do we make it easier for entry? How do we create a system that stops everybody from having to create their own BCH Bull or their own, web wallet and a smart contract interface system between the financial aspect and whatever the app is trying to do, and that network stack, as it were, is what they really want to focus on to make it easier for developers. Because if they were to create a second app, they don't want to have to go through all the same learning challenges as before. And one of the objectives now is to create a stack plus a smart app, smart wallet system that allows users to create apps or wallets for developers in a much easier way, that we can then start bringing developers from Ethereum and other places back into the kind of the UTXO model. And now that BCH Bull has been successful, you ultimately need a way to monetize whatever you're doing, right? GP is still a company, and it still needs to earn, right? So one of the apps that GP wants to develop ultimately to grow BCH Bull, and potentially a native savings app, which is the other side of AnyHedge, right? Is for the liquidity to be more decentralized. Right now, we have a centralized liquidity pool, but that has a limited amount of growth. And to really grow, to really challenge some of these other bigger DeFi leverage platforms, you really need decentralized liquidity. So the way to grow BCH Bull is to get more decentralized liquidity, but GP doesn't want to create a whole new app on its standalone. So the idea is that we develop a stack that allows developers to build. We create documentation for that stack so that it's easy. We create a wallet that allows the stack and the apps developed on the stack to talk to the wallet in a smart, easy to use system. And then we build a decentralized liquidity app on top of that. It's a huge vision. But the idea is as GP is building, it allows people to follow. And so, yeah, that project has started. There is some behind the scenes. It's just starting. I mean, I don't want to reveal too much, but
yes.
I want to say that it's been thought out with a 2 to 3 year vision in mind. It's been thought out that it has a system that allows for easy adoption. and branded in a way that should hopefully unite rather than kind of divide the developers, because ultimately it's there's lots of little pieces to this jigsaw, and it's very easy just to create a little, here's a small stack here, and here's a little app here, and here's something here, and here's something on GitLab, and to bring it all together to a unified vision, it requires a little bit of forethought. And so there is some branding associated with the whole kind of suite of ideas that are coming. I don't want to do a big reveal on that yet, but I think it's pretty cool. It is nice. I'm hoping it will inspire development, and for people to come and check it out and use whatever stack is being built and build on BCH. So we'll see. I mean, it should be nice. I don't want to give the big reveal yet.
Yeah, exciting times. Can you maybe comment or maybe give a no comment on the fact there was recently insane premiums on BCH Bull in the Telegram? Everyone was talking about, it was like shorts was negative 230,000% or whatever it was. And it happened, because again, there was some whispers that maybe once you get a couple more whales in there that are just, like you said, there's 10 million locked. But if you have people coming in who are just suddenly exploding even that value upwards, the LP has to adjust, right? So any more info on what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just shows the limitations of the centralized LP. And so for the system to stay stable and balanced, as the liquidity is running short, the premiums start to get ridiculous whichever direction you're going in, and it is one of the growth limitations of this particular product. But once that limitation has been lifted, there could be a much bigger growth potential for everybody to be able to make contracts that are kind of sensible and within a sensible premium rate. So I think that is just an LP issue, and I will leave any specific questions on the market maker and the algorithm and all that. I mean, there's a huge amount of brains behind it. I have no idea. That side of it, I was like, right, dude, I'm not involved in that. So leave that to Emergent. It's too smart for me. What's going on there?
I'm looking forward to this. If maybe there'll be a way that you can put some of your BCH into, some kind of decentralized LP pool or something, and then you're part of the BCH Bull matching, liquidity pool, kind of like on Cauldron, except you could do it on BCH Bull as you just bet kind of contrary to the market, but harvest some of the fees of everyone coming in. That's sounding pretty good to me. So I'm hoping. Yeah,
and I think
something like that.
I think as I was saying earlier, like BCH Bull is one side of the potential product suite. Like what I would hope, and I've always asked Emergent reasons for this, is I think crypto and BCH, all of crypto is well behind fiat when it comes to apps and services. Like, this may be heresy to say, but I love the fiat apps. Like, I've worked now in 5 continents, right, in different parts of the world, living there, earning there, and the banking apps are immeasurably better than every crypto wallet I've ever come across. Even in Cambodia, which is now starting to is starting to thrive, but the fiat apps, my banking app just kicks ass. Like, it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's quicker, it's better, it's more reliable than any crypto app, any BCH wallet. And it's branded as a banking app, right? It has my different accounts and my way to manage my finances. Whereas I look at my crypto wallet, I'm like, this isn't a legitimate financial application. It's just has a number on a screen and all the volatility and the trading, and it doesn't work for me as a bank. So one side of the BCH Bull suite is going to be hopefully a savings app inbuilt to a native wallet that you can hedge immediately, instantly, and so any hedge suite of BCH Bull plus whatever integrated apps we have as a banking app will be amazing, and I think the volume for that will be great. And then if you have the third part, which is the decentralized LP that anybody can submit to, that supports BCH Bull, supports all the savers in all the wallets, I think it'll be a pretty amazing economy for all parties.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Always more good stuff coming from the GP team there. I have a couple other news items that I just wanted to touch on. We had BCHD coming back in consensus. Op Return, the developer, seems to have delivered at least part of, maybe not fully finished yet, but the flip started to get that node implementation back in action with cash tokens, which is great. Steve Thurmond and co, who have released the BCH Stamps beta, they have been hard at work, and that's constantly getting better. They have been asking us about getting it into Selene Wallet. It's in the pipeline, but there's only so many hours in the day. Stamps.cash, if you want to check that out and play around with it. And Paytuck put up some pretty cool photos of them at Otaku Fest 2024, which is a cosplay and hobbies convention in Cebu, or Cebu, I don't know, Cebu in the Philippines. And you can see them there having a great time with a giant BCH sword at the ready. So I just love to see all these different little elements of the BCH ecosystem are kicking off. Is there any particular part of these or other bits of the BCH ecosystem that you're particularly enthused about recently?
Are we doing a cosplay for BCH Bliss 2025?
I don't know about that. The Wizards? I don't know. Remains to be seen. Can't say more on that, but could be interesting. Maybe I don't know, cosplay competition, something like that. BCH. I don't know. Well, let's workshop that a little bit. I think probably needs a bit more analysis. But yeah, I mean, obviously, crypto is related to everything. Everything's related to crypto. Is there, like, when you're not in the weeds with Jogs and with BCH Bull, do you have any thoughts just on the rest of the ecosystem? Obviously, like you said, you're maybe not following too much of the drama, but any other projects that have caught your eye or impressed you, or like at Bliss, you got a chance to meet some of the other guys in the scene and whatnot, right?
I haven't got any specific thoughts on BCH itself. I mean, obviously, it's an interesting time of year for the whole crypto cycle, right? Because we have the US elections and the alleged, halvening that's passed and what's supposed to be happening in the macro economy. And so it is interesting to see what might happen with prices and speculation going forward. I think this is different. My feeling is that this 4-year cycle seems to be a little bit different with what's going on with world wars that are occurring and a slightly different set of elections. It will be interesting to see what will happen with Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash over the next year. I think the groundwork has changed, and I will be curious to see whether there is more adoption of BCH versus BTC going forward. I'm not sure the cosplay is going to inspire it, but
you're not feeling inspired by the cosplay. I don't know. It was looking pretty fun to me. I would get involved in that. I love dressing up. Okay, we got to quickly touch on the price, which we usually do at the start, but wasn't the way it went this time. USD $345.11 per 100 megasats. That's flat. One BTC sat buys 173.9 BCH sats, and one ETH buys 775 megasats. BCH has snuck its way back into rank 14 on the coin market cap there, looking to take out SHIB, but we would need a big surge to get there. How do you follow the markets? Speaking of that, with BCH Bull, I guess any volatility is good volatility as far as that's concerned, right?
Yeah, I think from a trader's perspective, BCH Bull volume does have some relativity to what's going on in the market. From my perspective, like I'm so much happier when I'm not looking at any of this, so I'll just hedge and forget it. Like there's too much going on that I don't have, like, I have dabbled a little bit, my XRP days, 2017.
Yes.
When I was going to make my millions. No, I'm trying to start leading a more simple life, and I think crypto volatility in the markets is just too much for me now. Like, I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd rather just stay out of it.
Crack on. Fair enough. Okay. All right. Well, we always do our message to the community at the end of the show. Your chance to talk to the BCH community and tell them what they need to hear. What is it that the BCH community needs to hear?
I've been in since 2019, 2020, and I would say, keep sticking to your belief system, right? That it is a peer-to-peer electronic cash network for the world. It's there to liberate and genuinely give opportunity to those that have not. You're one of the last few bastions that are sticking to that message. And despite the difficulties that you've had through the multiple arguments with the BTCers and the forks, you are still the last few standing. And if anybody is going to be able to make an impact, it will be the Bitcoin Cash guys. So stick with it. Like, if you make it or not, at least you want to look back at it and say you tried, right? So yeah, I think the future is good. I think you have a good chance.
All right, fair enough. Supporter appreciation. Thank you very much to our donators. Thank you to our patrons, Ricky and HP. Thank you to our sponsors. Check out BCH Bull.com, General Protocols, and our Flipstarter contributors, Majumali Marcelo. Go to 2024.bcharge.com, Molecular, Erdogan Talk, Turek, Emergent Reasons, Big V, and the Bitcoin Cash Tokyo Gang, Peter McCormack, Brian Kanachi, Admin Satoshi, and Beer. Start guide FAQs and links are at www.bitcoincashpodcast.com. If you're new, you can check out episode 85 and you can try Selene Wallet at selene.cash. If you want to check out Journal of Global Surgery, that is at jogs.one, jogs.one. And final shout outs. Saqib, starting with you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate all the support for Jogs. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I hope to be on the podium at BCH Bliss when you set it up, 2026.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Jet, any shout outs?
Not today, no. Well, actually, you know what? I would say my shout outs are to you, Saqib, and to Nopara. I feel like this weekend I was like, oh, this is going to be a big weekend, but I've enjoyed both of these conversations so much. It's been a treat. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, the podcast always putting up new and diverse kind of guests. I think that's something I really enjoy about it too, is that obviously it's always BCH, but the spread of different guests and perspectives we get, different projects and things is always astonishing to me, as well as the news. The crypto circus is always throwing us a few curveballs. My shout out goes to Emergent Reasons for just crushing it year after year after year after year in the BCH community, and the amount of times that he has been referenced on this show by a whole variety of people as being somewhat instrumental in their journey or giving them some key perspective or encouraging their project or whatever is just immense. So an absolute MVP of the BCH revolution, and very glad to have him on our team. All right, that'll do it. Thank you all for listening. Till next time.